Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Gerber. I did this research during my bachelor's at Furman University, and I was working with Dr. Courtney Quinn, and I'm now a master's student at the Graduate Institute studying consciousness studies and transpersonal psychology. So I did research on the theory of oneness in renewed consciousness research. I did a quantitative analysis of personal narratives to study the consistency of the pure experience and its role in shifting global consciousness. So I was inspired by Nishida Kitaro and other Zen philosophers. They emphasized the importance and the attainability of having this pure experience. This was a term coined by William James, a Western philosopher and psychologist, and he emphasized this oneness experience, this experience of feeling interconnected, of feeling one with all things. In Zen, it's often described as a feeling of emptiness. And within that emptiness, all is one. So Nishida Kitaro and other Zen philosophers, they emphasize that we can attain this experience and we can attain it in this life. And this is a major goal of Zen Buddhism. And now in the West, we're seeing that a lot of people seem to be having these oneness experiences, especially in this renewed consciousness research, specifically for researchers working with plant medicines such as psychedelic mushrooms, LSD, MDMA, DMT, researchers like Roland Griffiths, Robin Carhart Harris. When they're giving participants something like magic mushrooms, many of them are having this oneness experience pretty consistently. So I wanted to see, using my skill set and data analysis, how can I determine, are these experiences happening? How can we quantify them without bringing in anyone to take a substance? Without necessarily sending out surveys, without being very active with it? How can I do it passively using data that is readily available on the internet? So I was able to access this database of psychoactive plant and drug experience reports. These were written experiences from different users of different substances. I selected DMT in the form of DMT and ayahuasca, mescaline as mescaline cacti peyote, LSD, mushrooms as mushrooms psilocybin, ketamine, cannabis, and MDMA. So I extracted experiences containing sets of words describing both oneness and emptiness, these sort of two sides of the same coin. For oneness, I chose the words oneness, interconnected, and unity. And for emptiness, I chose emptiness, nothingness, and void. So I wanted to select terms that were unequivocally related to oneness or emptiness, words that wouldn't get confused for something else in the wrong context. So as you can see here in my code, for the 324 reports for this is specific to DMT, if it contains the word oneness or interconnected or unity, it would add a true value in that row. And then I was able to quantify how many true values there were. And then that was how I determined how many people described oneness based on my criteria. This would be an a priori coding system. And so I generated figures and I was able to visualize how many people described oneness experiences. So for oneness, there were no significant results, but this was sort of expected, right? We weren't necessarily looking for, are more people having them versus not? We just wanted to see, can we measure them using quantitative methods? Can we take this textual data and analyze it using quantitative methods? And can we observe are people having the experiences? And we were able to observe this. So the oneness experience is being felt, as you can see, most prevalently with DMT and mescaline, and then less so for LSD, mushrooms, and MDMA, and then slightly less for ketamine and cannabis. For DMT and mescaline, I'd say approximately a quarter are describing a oneness experience. And in terms of emptiness, which is a term sort of synonymous with the experience of oneness, often seen as two sides of the same coin. Also, wholeness versus nothingness can often be a similar sort of experience. Again, there were no significant results. We did see that more people actually were describing emptiness for a majority of the substances. So for DMT, and then many more people for LSD describing an experience of emptiness, and then more for mushrooms, ketamine, and cannabis. However, for mescaline and MDMA, we have far fewer people who are describing emptiness. More people who are describing oneness, which I think is interesting. So DMT and mescaline do create a higher proportion of oneness experiences. We think this could be because they're consumed in this more ceremonial setting. There may be a shaman involved. There may be much more intention going in. The individual may be seeking out one of these specific oneness experiences. And these are also considered to be two of the more powerful plant medicines. So this is not surprising. What was interesting is that MDMA and mescaline users are reporting less experiences of emptiness. From what I've read, mescaline is often considered very close to MDMA in terms of this feeling of connection. Many users of mescaline describe feelings of connection that are sort of similar to that MDMA-like state. Obviously, MDMA, many people feel very connected to other people, to their surroundings, to other beings. So because of this more MDMA-like feel, this feeling of connection, this may be why more people are describing oneness or wholeness as opposed to emptiness. As expected, the non-classic psychedelics, ketamine, cannabis, and MDMA, they were the lowest. This is likely because they're often used more recreationally, often used in lower doses, often used, and these are less psychoactive substances as compared to something like DMT or mescaline. But we must also consider that there are shortfalls in this methodology. So, in terms of just the words I picked for oneness, say unity, there may be some people who are describing the term unity, but not necessarily in the context of having a oneness experience. On the other hand, there are likely many experiences that were left out because maybe there were words they used that weren't necessarily one of those three words, or, for example, the word one. It is likely that some people described feeling one with everything, but other people may use just the word one in a very different context. So that word has to be left out. So there are some shortfalls, but the beauty of this is that there is a lot of data available. So, with more data, the effects of these confounding variables are sort of lessened. So in conclusion, the oneness or emptiness experience, it is occurring for users of psychoactive plants and drugs. I'm not here to say that they're having this ultimate enlightenment experience. I'm not saying that it is completely authentic or that it may be not, it could be some sort of sense of illusion, some rush of neurotransmitters in the brain. I'm not saying that it is completely this oneness experience that is described in Zen Buddhism, this experience of enlightenment. What I am saying is that they're describing an experience of oneness. Now, whether it is that enlightenment experience, I think is less important. I think what is important is the feeling of oneness, and then what comes from that, feelings of interconnection, of being more empathetic and compassionate. And we're also able to show that we can quantify these large-scale text-based data sets using this a priori coding system, which I think can have a lot of applications outside of this setting in consciousness studies. Oftentimes the sciences is very data-driven, and then the humanities is very looking at case studies, looking at literature, text-based analysis. With this study, we were able to show that we can sort of bridge these two worlds. We can use, data mining, data analysis, large-scale big data methods, and apply them to qualitative data, especially with large data sets that are readily available on the internet, survey data, experiential data. we can start to see trends. Maybe we can't look for specific significant data, but we can see some trends in what's happening without necessarily having to do a lot of active data collection. So the implications, obviously there's a lot of renewed research and legislation going into these plant medicines. A lot of people know about it. People hear about, their friend of a friend went to Peru and had an ayahuasca experience, or, relatives are reading Michael Pollan's new book. People are hearing about it. It's being taken more seriously. And this means that this oneness experience, it is becoming more accessible. Again, I'm not here to say whether it is this true enlightenment experience, but it is an experience of oneness, which I think, no matter the extent of it, I think is very beneficial for our world. We live in this society where it's so disconnected. People are disconnected from the land. There's these great divides between the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom and the human kingdom, divides between countries, between neighbors. There's so much division. But if we can have these oneness experiences, in my opinion, I think that would just be so beneficial moving forward for how we treat one another, how we treat our planet, how we treat this earth, this mother that is caring for us, that provides for us, that we are one with. I think, in my opinion, again, I'm not necessarily saying this is truth, but I do feel there would be a lot of positive impacts also in this day and age politically. There's a lot of division between the two sides. We're seeing uprising by groups who do not feel they're being represented, that they're being heard, that they have, they're being treated fairly. So again, I think there's many implications of this oneness experience, and we're able to see that people can have this oneness experience through the use of sacred plant medicines. So I think that can be a really positive thing, especially in this Western world, where these plant medicines, they can be teachers, and they can offer this interesting parallel to something like monastic life, where people are very committed. It's very hard work. They're meditating very regularly. It's difficult and it's challenging, and a lot of people are intimidated by that, especially in the Western world, when they're committed to their jobs. They have to take care of their family. There's a specific way to live, and people, that may seem intimidating to some people, whereas maybe going and taking a plant medicine on the weekend, that can be integrated as part of their spiritual practice, and they can have these oneness experiences without necessarily having to do daily committed practice. There are some questions about whether this is the correct path, whether it is using intoxicants that are clouding the brain, preventing us from seeing clearly. There are questions whether it is a complete experience, whether it is a complete enlightenment experience, or whether it is just a window into this space, which I think, even if it is a window, it is an important window to look through. And there's also questions about integration. So if someone is not living spiritually, living with spirit, nurturing their mind, it may be difficult. They may have difficult experiences with plant medicines, and they may have a tough time integrating back into their normal daily lives. But I know in the Navajo culture and many indigenous cultures, you're seeing a lot of young people who are not necessarily able to keep up the traditions, the 10-day long ceremonies, because they're living more Americanized, modernized lives, and there's not the time for that anymore. But the use of peyote and being part of the Native American church, this has been tremendously important and very popular for these young people, because it gives them a chance to connect with one another, connect with themselves, with their rituals, with the land. And I think it can serve a similar role for the Western world. And in terms of experiencing oneness, I think it's just incredibly important. One is able to exist outside of ego. And when we exist outside of ego, we can live with compassion, with loving kindness, and with just awareness, being aware when ego is taking over, being aware, you know, living with spirit, constant awareness, how we're treating one another and, treating this earth. So in closing, I wanted to share an anonymous oneness experience. This was a user of DMT, dimethyltryptamine. So as I still dance with all oneness, I look to my initial breakthrough into a realm of more dimension than can be imagined. I experienced death and felt the feeling of all of me releasing back into the oneness of everything. I saw speaker-like creatures, fanning women, and other indescribable beautiful dancers moving freely with the most beauty. I experienced what I felt is in all things and is the very makeup of the DNA and the cells deep within. It is all around us always, and it keeps us safe and will be there when we die. I felt the beautiful aura of my parents and saw myself join with their oneness and create beautiful light after death. I saw the shifting of light and dark, the fall and collapse of Trump and industry, creating great destruction, but creating beautiful new light. As I return to life, I will no longer fear death and thoroughly enjoy the uniqueness of life. I saw birth, a beautiful and rare coming together of energy, creating something that can be entered into this world, and a constant cycle of oneness flowing in and out of all things. There was so much beauty in this place. I will one day return. The key is love and light, and no matter where. Feel it deeply and give it deeply. Make people happy and let them know that all will be well. Enjoy all things as this life is limited. Just be in it and enjoy the rarity of it. We were created by love. It is what we are. It makes up every cell of us. Share it and cherish it deeply. A truly beautiful experience. So I wanted to thank you for listening, for your presence, for holding the space for me to share this sort of passion project I've been working on for a long time. And I really wanted to thank Mr. and Mrs. Dr. Quinn for hearing me and for giving me the opportunity to present this and giving me that sort of push. I certainly would not have gone forward presenting this if it weren't for your help and your encouragement. So I thank you so much. Again, thank you for all those who heard this and for all those who are participating in this conference. I think it's a truly wonderful thing that everyone is doing here, and this sort of thinking on the edge of consciousness is incredibly important. So I thank you. Take care.